information on prevention, tools for a healthy lifestyle. Make little changes to be the best you. It's all here. A podcast empowering, informing, and motivating Bermuda to live well. Bermuda Health-Abets. Everything from A to Z on healthy living. Brought to you by the Health Promotion and Wellness Office of the Department of Health in collaboration with local health partners.
Welcome to another episode of Bermuda Health-Abets, a podcast where we discuss everything from A to Z on healthy living with the mission of empowering, informing, and motivating Bermuda residents to live well. I'm your host, Yosifia Spence, from the Health Promotion and Wellness Office at the Department of Health, and I'm a public health educator. I'd like to welcome our listeners and welcome our two guests today from Bermuda is Love, William Campbell, and Aaron Crichlow. So if you could, our topic, actually, let me just get back to our topic for today. Our topic for today is actually food insecurity. And if you could just give us a bit more about yourselves before we get into that topic. William?
Of course. Thank you very much, first of all, for having us on the podcast today. Representing Bermuda is Love. We are a social group, a community movement, and an aspiring charity as well that is aiming to address basic material rights in Bermuda and provide a basic material rights framework for 7 particular rights: food, clothing, education, housing, justice, healthcare, and a healthy environment.
That's amazing. Aaron?
Yes, my name is Aaron Crichlow. Thank you again for being here. I'm talking about Bermuda's Love and food security and the right to food. As Will stated, Bermuda's Love, we're dedicated to building that community of love where everyone's basic needs are met. And we do that through a variety of different ways. We have campaigns, as you may have seen, throughout the Royal Gazette as well as in the public, focusing on the different rights, such as food. So we had a Zero Hunger campaign, we had our 5-a-day campaign, just talking about what food security looks like in Bermuda and how we can really make it a reality. For us, it's really about structuring or talking about these different needs, these basic needs that we say as a moral imperative for Bermuda to really recognize and deal with and make relevant to the whole of society. Really elevate, the need that we need to ensure that everyone's basic needs are met is a responsibility that each and every one of us has to meet, and it's only by working together that we can really address these issues.
That's so great. Honestly, that's amazing. You just listening to y'all. And as a health educator or someone who has a background in health promotion, social determinants of health are a major component or driver for, initiatives and the things that we do. So basically, everything you just said here and access. So a lot of these things you've mentioned, those are basic human rights, and so recognizing that this is a really important topic for the community, and we all really have a responsibility in contributing to creating this access, right? We have enough resources. How are we using them? And who are we helping when it comes to these resources? So when we get to our topic of the day, which is food insecurity, what you mentioned the right to food. But before you get to that, what does food insecurity mean to you?
Well, if I can, food security it basically speaks to a state where people have the ability to access at sustainable rates and at sustainable prices too, fresh, nutritious food that they can again utilize for maximizing their subsistence needs. It is basically the state wherein everybody has access to high-quality foodstuff, and we really must as well be careful to pay attention to quality in our foodstuffs. It is not sufficient for us to say that everybody having access to packaged and processed foods is sufficient for a healthy society. As you'd mentioned, social determinants of health are absolutely pinned to socioeconomic determinants. And
Yes.
It really is a question of access and a question of distribution of resources as to how we build a healthy society. And food security truly is the bottom of the pyramid there. It is conceptualized in Maslow's hierarchy of needs as, again, those basic rights that, again, all of human flourishing is dependent upon as a baseline. Until we have a healthy food secure state, then we cannot have a healthy and secure population.
I totally agree. Any other thoughts on that, Aaron?
Yeah, at the end of the day, I think we just want a society where people don't have to choose between paying the rent or paying for grocery bills or paying for electricity, but that these are all things that are considered rights. People don't have to look for charity or financial assistance even in order to make sure that they're able to survive. That it's just guaranteed, their existence is guaranteed just so simply by being human. And so that's really the idea that we're really wanting to promote within Bermuda, within Bermuda's Love, the idea that these rights that we're advocating for, these needs that we want to meet, are basic for all people, for all persons. Everyone needs food. It's not a question of, is it the right choice or not? It is the right choice. It is the right thing to do. It's just about how do we make it a reality. And we talk about economic injustice. We see Bermuda as not having an issue with scarcity of food. It's not an issue of, is there enough food available? But it's a question of what's the distribution, as Will said, and who has access to this food. We see our GDP is quite high. We see our GDP per capita is enormous when you compare it to other relative countries. And so when we talk about that in Bermuda's context, how do we really create a society that ensures that every person has access to the food so that they don't have to worry about where the next meal is coming from?
Wow. And what's so incredible is that you mentioned, like GDP and all of those things. We boast about that, right? And you think about it, you have families with a full month's income, and you still have to determine whether or not you're going to pay your bills or put food in your fridge, or you have to determine what quality of food you're going to actually put in your, because you mentioned that, William, and that to me, I feel like shouldn't really have to be a debate. And being someone in public health, I want people to have access to good quality foods that contribute to good health, right? So that was your view on food security, because initially I said food insecurity, I meant food security. But so with that, what do you define as the right to food, and why is this important?
Well, the right to food, basically, again, as Aaron opined, is more of a moral imperative for us beyond the basic economic state of food security. It speaks to an ethical understanding of food as a really, really important principle of human society, and something that we should cherish, and something that we should take care of, and something that, again, we should have a degree of reverence for. Not just seeing it as another part of the day and part of our daily sustenance, because we appreciate that good quality food is a much more powerful determinant of the quality of our lives. And lack of access, as we've said, to good quality food, too, is an extremely important determinant of our lives. So it really is something that we can't really afford to ignore. And it can be something that some in society have the ability to afford to ignore, because they do not have their access to high-quality foodstuffs necessarily challenged. And so the challenge for us as well here in Bermuda is to balance that playing field and to bridge that inequality gap on access. And that, too, needs to be transformative in the way we look at our global food system and the way in which we look at how our food system as it exists today serves various segments of the population better than it does others. And to look at that, too, as opportunity for us in Bermuda to improve all of our standards of living and our standards of care and provision of food, because we can do a lot more for each other and for our country and for our economic state of being by prioritizing sustainable and powerful appreciations of our food system, and by progressively amending those systems too, such that they provide for us better than they do presently.
Profoundly said.
Yes. I can just add that, as Will stated, the idea that we have behind the right to food, and it elevates food from an individual concept or individual issue to a social issue or community issue. So when we talk about the right to food, we're talking about ensuring that this right is guaranteed for each person. It's universally applied, unconditionally applied, and that it's encompassing the whole of society. That is not, a lot of people think that, your rent's your own responsibility. You work a job, you have to pay your own rent. You have to get a job, get those bills, you pay for your own food and these types of things. And for the right to food is about transforming that type of ideology from changing food to be seen as something that individuals buy and as a commodity in itself, into a social right, a social issue. And essentially, I like to relate it a lot to public education. So, for example, we more or less regard education as a right, and we see that the government provides it as a publicly funded, because we understand the benefit that education has to opportunity and to success and progress in society. And we believe that same type of framework, that same type of moral thinking should also be applied to food, as well as to all the other rights that Bermuda
Housing,
advocates.
of
Exactly.
course,
Housing, healthcare.
Right.
Is a big topic that absolutely relates directly to food. And as Will also mentioned, as I think you mentioned as well, with the social determinants of health, Bermuda, as many will recognize, is one of the worst places when it comes to obesity and chronic illnesses. And this is mainly because we have a very poor diet. And that is mainly because we have poor access to healthy foods.
I was going to say that, yeah.
It's all very cyclical, and all these different issues relate to each other, which is why we have this human rights framework, so that people can recognize and understand that every issue is tied to each other. And if we're not, we have to make sure that we're working on every issue at the same time, in order to really have a holistic, systemic approach to resolving all the issues that we face in society.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, in all honesty, like just thinking about what you've both just said, right? We think about all of those things and mentioning the social determinants of health, but like these are all rights, right? So changing a culture really around how we see these things and recognizing our responsibility as a part of a community for advocating for policies and advocating for programs that create this right. You said equitable earlier, but when you want to think about equitability versus equality to something, right? So recognizing, actually, this person is 5'4", but they need 6 more inches to reach the gate versus this 6 foot tall person, right? And recognizing the difference between equality and equity and equitable access to these resources, right? And food being a basic human right. So is housing. Right? So when you talk about the personal responsibility for rent, really, well, what type of responsibility do we hold as a society, right? To give persons access to having proper shelter. Because when you talk about housing, you also want to talk about what is the quality of that housing, right? Are you living with mold, which contributes to asthma and certain, what is the quality of the air in your house, right? So we can get deep into this discussion, and I don't want to derail our conversation, but I think that what you're doing as an organization is very important. And when you talk about multi-pronged approaches, as Aaron, systemic approaches and multi-pronged approaches, as Aaron mentioned earlier, and being an entity that then contributes to so many other organizations that are trying to address these issues in our community. So you said food, the right to food, and then you said food insecurity. Food security. So what is the difference between those two?
Well, they're quite intertwined frameworks. Food security we would state as being an economic state of relative access and somewhat balanced and equitable access. The right to food, however, again, is taking it a little bit of a step farther and saying that we all as a society have a responsibility to maximize the quality of the service that we are providing for each other in food. And that says that we should be, again, actively investing in the entire value chain of our food system. And that starts with local farmers. That starts with local food producers. It starts with local food services as well. It gets back to, again, how and where we get our food from and who, too, in our society benefits as a result of our consumer choices. And that, too, can reshape a lot of our conversation around how we provide these things, too. As Aaron mentioned, we have a multi-pronged approach with these rights in Bermuda's Love fundamentally, as an advocacy organization, we are deeply engaged in the social education for our community around why these issues are important. As Aaron said, how they are interdisciplinary, how they link to housing and other forms of systemic state in our country. And two, we have on the back end of that a multi-sector and a multi-organizational approach towards resolving and providing solution for these. We would say that there needs to be greater unity among the groups that are addressing these rights, a greater coalescence around providing resolution to these rights rather than simply continuing to service the shortcomings of the systems. And that means that we need to develop greater partnerships across the private and the public and the third sector organizations. We need to build cooperative organizations, private-public partnerships. We need to, again, look at how we can build better systems to provide these rights for us here in Bermuda. We're a small garden. We've got 65 to 70,000 people here. We should be able to feed everybody and be able to provide a good quality meal for every person in Bermuda. And we can build systems, too, that better assist us in making that reality.
Thank you. Aaron, any thoughts on that?
No, I fully agree with everything Will said.
I know, I feel like that was really well said. I mean, like, really just not working in silos anymore. And I think there's a lot of effort actually being put towards that. It's really the time that it takes to address social issues. It's sometimes so slow moving. You want to pull your hair out. But I agree. We really do have to kind of work together. So what role does an individual play, in ensuring the right to food?
I think, as you alluded as well, Bermuda's Love is all about changing or transforming the hearts and minds of individuals. So I would say the first step is for people just to recognize that, they have a responsibility to play, that they are thinking about this issue from a broad social, societal standpoint. Thinking about how can I contribute to ensuring that myself, I'm food secure, I'm secure in my own quality of nutritious food, as well as how can I play a role in other organizations, in other companies, in my own workplace, as well as from a government point of view, what thing can I talk to my MP about in terms of making Bermuda more food secure, and that takes various different forms. One example is through Bermuda's Love. We have our community garden. Just come out and learn about where broccoli comes from, where carrots come from. It's actually quite surprising how many people actually don't understand or don't know how broccoli is grown, that's with the stem, and how carrots grow in the ground. So we are so disconnected from where food is grown, where food comes from, and Bermuda being the small isolated island in the middle of Atlantic is probably one of the biggest factors to that. So I think we have a responsibility to go out of our own way to try to find or make sure that we are educated on what healthy food is, growing your own food, as well as supporting those ideas, those farmers, those local companies that are providing that healthy food. And I would even say go even further to talk to MPs about how we can make some type of regulations that limit the amount of poor food quality that is brought to the island. So there are lots of different ways that we can do it. I don't know if you had any other suggestions with that, Will.
Again, as Aaron said, there's a lot to be said for consumer choice, and it really does matter where we, as food consumers, put our dollars. There's always going to be a constant need, of course, for food, but if we are sending money overseas to Nasbago Corp and Kellogg Corp, who are sending processed foods that have very, very little nutritional benefit to Bermuda, then, again, we are sending our money abroad for very, very, very poor quality output. And the quality of our life outcomes, and as you'd mentioned, social determinants of our lives too, will be influenced by our choice. And our choice too to prioritize healthy and nutritious food, preferably in spaces too where that money for the product can be recirculated into the local economy.
Right. Completely agree with that. And you talked about, so that was a more so speaking to the individual and what the individual can do. But what can government, do in terms of playing a role in ensuring the right to food?
If I could briefly just have a last thing on the individual. The most
Mm-hmm.
important
Sorry.
thing that all of us as individuals can do is to be less of an individual and to be more of a collective and more of a community, and to recognize that all of our choices impact everyone that we share rooms with and everyone that we share this country with, and that framework and that moral vision rather for our collective destinies is what we need to cherish and to take care of. As far as how government can support that, as Aaron mentioned, there's great need for looking at our legislation right now and ensuring that our legislative frameworks are fit for purpose for the 21st century. We have a massive, massive issue in this century with the bearing pressure of climate change. And climate change is actively destroying our ability to rely on the global food system as it has been constructed in the last 150 years.
Right.
And this global food system is not going to be in the same shape as it is presently today in the next 20 and 30 years, because we are already experiencing catastrophic crop failures as a result of climate impacts across the world. These are the places where we in Bermuda get our food from. And if those countries aren't going to be able to produce the food that we require, then again, we need to be very, very daring and very bold and very forward-thinking about what we are going to do to adapt to this.
Yeah.
When we look at climate and carbon pollution, we see that we are poisoning the only well that we can drink from when it comes to producing food. That is absolutely the most important overarching thing we can do to guarantee 21st century food security. And two, the government can as well continue its collaboration with further private sector groups, other public groups, third-party groups as well, because we do need collective and comprehensive solutions. And that comes from all of us together as a community uniting and pulling the same way.
Thank you. Completely agree with that. And Aaron even mentioned earlier you mentioned the individual perspective, but all, in terms of like talking to your MPs and so on, but, more specifically, advocating for policies that support these concepts, right? And that's not even just about the individual. When you look at, okay, what are we asking for from when it comes to, government and politics and so on and so forth, as an entity that contributes to the well-being of a community, and working together. You mentioned NGOs and private sector and government all working together, and I think a lot of that is currently happening. I don't want that to be lost on us as well, but I do think it really is important to think about, okay, 30 years, what does that look like? Self-sustainability is really important now. So even when you mentioned your community gardens, right? And just to mention even some of the things that go on within the community, you have people who give gardening classes, you know what I mean? In the private and public sector, you have all of those things, and kind of wanting to actually engage in that stuff so that you could actually, we're not going to be able to rely on the concept of import for the, forever, right? And that's what you brought up in reference to kind of climate change, right? It's important to see how that's impacting our community and our ability to actually access food. It's crazy. You don't even think about those connections, right? So we talked about the individual responsibility. We talked about the governmental responsibility to the right to food. So how does sustainable agriculture factor into ensuring the right to food?
Well, if we don't have sustainable agriculture, then it's not going to last for a very long time, right? So it's all about in making sure that we now have access to food, as well as future generations, my children, my grandchildren, my great-grandchildren, my great-great-great-grandchildren have access to quality food. So it's about making sure that all the steps that we do or trying to take the best holistic picture of what the various issues are, and making sure that we are not, exploiting nature itself and doing in anything that we do. So it's really about trying to make a large scope picture about what what are the things that we can do in society to meet create this sustainable agriculture, which we at Bermuda's Love would really like to talk about, just expanding Bermuda's own food agricultural sector or system. As Will and I have talked to various farmers around the island, and they have noted that only half of Bermuda's arable land is being currently used as for farming. And so it's about how can we, leverage this land, get government support to, produce or create or teach rather this new crop of farmers growing up in Bermuda. So when we talk about sustainability, I guess it's about making sure that there are pathways for children, for adults to get into the farming system and into the farming sector and really take hold of it and create their own ideas, put in their own ideas, and really transform it. As Will mentioned, is we can't stay in the status quo for long. The things that we're currently doing will lead to our detriment if they continue. And so it's about how do we, be creative and really try to transform this system so that it really benefits everyone, not just the companies, not just government, but all individuals in society. So we would love to see, greater support from government in that space to really say, Bermuda cannot continue to exist on 90% imported foods. So what is our goal? Like maybe it's we want to increase our own production of food to 20% as a goal, as a starting point. We would love to see that, and then providing, courses with, they have the signature schools that they're trying to do. They have Bermuda College as a technical institute trying to provide collaboration between the different farmers and giving them a space to teach this new generation of farmers and agricultural agronomists in Bermuda. So I think that's how we want to appreciate or take
I love that you gave us a list, because I feel like having actionable, things, right? And looking at, you brought up the signature schools and looking at how that can contribute, because I know, I have a teenager in school now, and she wants to be in health and medical, but thinking about some of the different things or that they have in the signature schools that they have access to in terms of topics. I don't recall if I saw anything around agriculture or like botanism or even just looking at sustainable development and things like that. I can't recall, so I'm not going to say for fact, but I think that those would be excellent topics when you think about, okay, what can I specialize in? Food is forever, right? And looking at how you can contribute to society. So I think those are really great topics. I personally think everyone should have a garden in their backyard. Now, I say that also knowing that I have seeds in my fridge because I haven't started my garden yet. But it's a start because I do really want to get to it. But recognizing you have the power also to create your own access. And so,
and I would even go further with all the schools. Every school should have a community garden. Even every parish should have more than one community garden. I know because of COVID, especially, we definitely saw an uptake of community gardens around the island. And the government has done initiatives with this, what's called
Grow, Eat, Save.
Grow, Eat, Save, exactly.
And we also have the gardening competition. And actually, to say, many of the schools do actually have gardens, and they engage the students in gardening clubs to actually participate, in gardening. So the students are getting some learning in it, but just to go a little further, and I feel like what you might be saying is being able to have product that come from those gardens that could maybe contribute to assisting some of those families of those kids in the schools, right? Exactly. And community gardens, like in each parish, that would be awesome. But I think that that's something in terms of, working towards things that might take time, but I think it's something that should be possible.
If I can briefly state on the issue too of education, when we expand that holistic lens towards health and towards food and everything as well, then we get much more holistic members of industry and a much more holistic and comprehensive offering as well. If we're looking at health in silos and we're just looking at treatment for issues, and we're not looking at the root causes and the predeterminants, as you mentioned, of where these issues come from, then all the issues that Aaron brought up earlier about obesity and diabetes, hypertension, low blood sugar, all of these things really come to light, and they also point us towards their roots in the global food system as it exists.
Of course.
And towards the issues with industrial farming and where we're getting that from. And two, one of the best ways, as we said here, is to amend that and to make a forward step against it, is to promote sustainable agricultural education in our schools, but also for adult education too, and to build up a structure by which we can have a degree of an agricultural cooperative organization where community gardens can sell produce back on to a vendor and have these sold back on for local distribution, and have accessible spaces where Bermudians can contribute to their own food system and to the availability of food product on the market here. And then that too can be one of those examples of where we, yes, look to these things as rights that we should protect and that we should guarantee, but also as responsibilities for us to build systems that make these offerings as good as we can. And that too can be a place where all Bermudians can participate and share in a share of a better and more food secure Bermuda.
Oh, wow. Honestly, I don't know if y'all are in public health or if y'all are, no, I'm just joking. But I do think a lot of the concepts intertwine in terms of access, right? Because as I mentioned earlier, social determinants of health, right? And you talked about looking at the cause of the cause. These are all public health concepts. It's recognizing what is the underlying root cause of the rates of diabetes and obesity that we have, here as a country. And I know our last numbers date back to 2014 in reference to having data that supports a lot of the things that you're talking about now. And they're currently doing the STEP survey to look at actual current numbers. Because I feel also, the pandemic may have impacted as well, some of those things, right? But coming back and bouncing back. And I feel like that Bermuda is Love you play a very important role in kind of us really moving forward when we think about the future and sustainability, right? And so when we talk about inequities, what are some other inequities, that, and I know we've pretty much mentioned this because we talked about social determinants of health, but what are those things that contribute to or affect the right to food?
I think in this topic, I think we can get really, explicit with the fact that lots of Bermudians will only have a lot of income if they're working in certain sectors of work. And that, to be clear, is international business, as well as perhaps maybe some government employment opportunities. So it's only in certain areas where people are making large amounts of money. And when we look at another sector of society, focusing mainly on black men, they who don't often work in those types of sectors are mainly doing hustle type of work or one-off part-time work, or working many different types of jobs. It means that they have a lack of income and that they don't have as much money in order to pay for the food supplies. And while everyone in Bermuda can see, the price of grapes rising by like $10 to $20, whatever it might be, it affects people differently. So the international business CEO will not be able to eat that cost without blinking an eye, probably not even notice the increase in cost. However, a family or a single mother of 3 or 4 will have to make that choice between, do I get healthy grapes, or do I get some, Lunchables in order to make sure that kids don't go starving?
Even a 2-parent household.
Exactly. Or even
you know what I'm saying?
Exactly. It affects everyone differently, but because of the economic injustice, the economic inequality that Bermuda faces, mainly due to within employment in Bermuda, it really brings home this idea. And I think for me, The real injustice of it all is the fact that some people will be making $200,000 plus, while other people are struggling to, pay their bills, make sure their family has a healthy meal. And we as Bermudians, we as humans should take this as an insult to our humanity, our own being. We should really say this should not happen ever. This should never happened in the past. It shouldn't happen now, and it should never happen in the future. And we should be doing everything in our power, everything that we can, mustering all the support, all the economic support, all the social support, everything, all the political support, in order to make sure that every person has food to eat, has healthy food to eat, and that all is sustainable and healthy. So that's really our, I guess, moral framework for these issues.
Oh my gosh. I mean, well said, right? And I think it causes an individual and even as a community to maybe think about some of these things. I'm so happy that y'all came in to have this conversation today. And you've mentioned so many things that we can do as individuals and as a community and even higher at the policy level to actually address, the right to food and food security in Bermuda. And so, with that said, as a organization, Bermuda is Love, how can people contribute to your cause, or how can they contact you or reach you? Do you have a number that you can give us that they can call, social medias that they can message you on?
Sure. So Bermuda's Love, you can contact us at 732-1899. That's our phone number, as well as our email, which is bermudaislove@gmail.com. So that's Bermuda's Love all spelled out @gmail.com. And then you can find us as well on various social media. So we have Instagram at BDAislove, Twitter, X, TikTok at Bermuda is Love, as we also have YouTube and Facebook at Bermuda is Love. And I would also just like to add that, we are doing our best as Bermuda's Love, but we can't do everything by ourselves. We don't have all the ideas, we don't have all the solutions. We're still trying to figure it out ourselves. And so we encourage any person who's interested in this issue to, reach out and try to get involved. Just join. The easiest way, I think, is just to give us a call or to contact us or just join an event. We hold weekly events that take on or talk about, advocate, or deal with all the various rights and issues that we advocate for. So we organize events not just relating to food, but relating to housing and clothing and education and healthcare and access to justice and healthy environment. So there's plenty of opportunities to get involved and to contribute and to learn more about what we're doing and to lend your own ideas to really make Bermuda the place that we want it to be.
Thank you so much. Will?
As a last, we do have a focus for this month on food and on a food campaign. We have a few more events coming up towards the end of this month as well on community gardening, and we hope you'll join us and attend there. Additionally, please also get involved with some of our other community partners, like the Christchurch Warwick Feeding Program. We do work as well with Eliza Doolittle Society and have worked with the Coalition for Protection of Children. There are a vast litany of groups in Bermuda that are addressing food security and food access, and it really is our desire and the movement of Bermuda's Love to bring these groups together and to bring all of us across the Bermudian community together to come up with comprehensive and effective and sustainable solutions to build a new social framework and a better social compact between us. That really is the core underlying aspect of our message. And so our doors are always open to you, and always we will do our best to provide you a meal as well. The next best place to start is at the next mealtime.
Thank you so much. I mean, what an amazing discussion, really, because these topics are a passion for me as well, being like a health promoter. So I actually really enjoyed listening to y'all just kind of talk about what Bermuda is Love and really what we should be doing as a community. I want to thank you, Aaron and Will, for coming in to have this discussion. I want to thank our audience for listening today. And I want to encourage you to do as Aaron and Will said, like, see how you can contribute, even if it's not, you don't think it's in a major way. I think that every little piece helps, right? And so even myself, I'm sitting here thinking, okay, well, how can I contribute or join the movement? And I think one of the biggest things that contribute to social change are grassroots. And so for me, this was just really eye-opening. So thank you so much, and thank you for listening.
Thank you as well.
Tune in to Bermuda Health-Abets on our Facebook and our YouTube. Thank you.
You have been listening to Bermuda Health-Abets. Please note, anything you heard on this podcast is not a substitute for visiting your healthcare provider. If you have a topic or want a question answered, please contact the Health Promotion and Wellness Office of the Department of Health by emailing healthpromotion@gov.bm or by calling 278-4900. Be sure to listen out for the next episode of Bermuda Health-Abets.